just accept me.
Okay.
Then inside the Zoom, then maybe that time you can add me.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Can you hear us? Everyone's testing their sound. Hi, everyone. I'm loving all these faces pouring in. This is so amazing. Love this. So welcome, welcome, welcome. TanyaTime Book Club is back in effect. We have a beautiful playlist right now. If you guys haven't seen it, it is on Spotify. We can share it in stories tomorrow because it's all 1950s, 60s jazz that is perfect for the book. And of course, the drum roll, please. We have our famed author, New York Times best-selling author, Sadeqa Johnson in the house. So I just want to start by clapping some hands. I want to see the love. I love it, you guys. I'm seeing all these beautiful faces. This is so amazing. Sadeqa, welcome to the TanyaTime Book Club. We have had such a blast reading you for the past couple of weeks. I love it. Fill the comments, drop your emoji signs, whatever you guys need. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Book Club.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. This is wonderful. Thank you. And that introduction never gets old. Every time I hear a New York Times bestseller, I feel like I want to raise the roof.
You should raise the roof. And this is that group. We are all about giving. Charisse, your agent, was on here a couple weeks ago on our live, and we gave her flowers. And this is that group where it's just like book people magic. Yeah. I was going to say, it's all of it. So we were really excited to have you here and we appreciate your time. And when I tell you, we really enjoyed your book, it was incredible. If you just allow me for 1 second to do a couple bits of housekeeping so everyone knows how our Zoom goes, we'll get started. Number one, you guys, can you hear me above the music or is it a little distracting? Someone tell me in a chat. Okay, cool. Okay. Just let me move this away from me. I need the participants off. Okay. My other thing is, so for those of you who are new to TanyaTime Book Club, we meet online and we discuss books in depth, week by week, chapter by chapter, no spoilers. It is, okay, Chris, the music is a little bit loud, so if we could turn that down, that would be great. So part two of that is, and the beauty of it is we get to do this on Zoom, the author. So this is your time. We've had a great time chatting and talking about all things the House of Eve on Instagram, but now we have, again, New York Times best-selling author Sadeqa Johnson here, and we are going to get to ask her all the questions that we're excited about. And everything. I will start, and I'm going to kick it off with a couple of questions to her, and then I'll open it up to you guys. How I like to say this works best is, you're going to keep yourselves on mute while the people are talking, and then you can raise your hand and we'll get to as many as possible. You can also engage and chat with each other in the chat. Put your questions in there, put your comments, exchange your names. It's a free space. This is everyone who's come on here has sort of signed up. So I really encourage you guys to make friends and have a good time. Like, we look forward to this. We're at home. We've got our wine, our tea, whatever it is. So enjoy and let's just be merry. So any questions after that, you guys? I feel like we all sort of get it. What I do want to say, hold on, let me open up the chat so I can pay attention to you guys. I want to start off again, Sadeqa, and welcome you again. I'm going to go back so that we can talk a little bit about your history, because you are, one of the things that I love about you is this isn't your first rodeo. Although you did come out the gates with a best-selling book for the New York Times, and it was on the New York Times bestseller list, which is a huge accomplishment and feat. You've been writing for a very long time. So I want you to introduce yourselves to everyone, because I think this tells a little bit about your history. Many of us have read Yellow Wife, and some of us have actually gone back and read your previous books. So if you could just take a couple minutes to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey and pivot from your previous career to now being a New York Times bestselling author.
Well, hello, everyone. It is so wonderful to see all of these beautiful faces. Book fans are like my favorite people in the world. It's like we all speak the same language. So thank you guys for taking some time out tonight to hang out with us and talk about all things books. So as Tanya mentioned, I'm Sadeqa Johnson. I'm the author of 5 novels, including The House of Eve. I started off wanting to be an actress. I grew up in Philadelphia, and I had these big dreams that I was going to go to New York and become an actress. So I went to college in New York City, but I didn't go to college to graduate. I went to college to be discovered. And I was there and I thought, oh, I'm only going to be here for 2 weeks. That was my thought. Like, I'm only going to be here 2 weeks because I remember reading about Erica Alexander, Cousin Pam, on The Cosby Show. She was also from Philadelphia. And she had gone to New York. I think she went to NYU and she was only there 2 weeks before she got discovered. And so I thought, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. Well, I graduated from college. And once I graduated, realized very quickly that New York City was a very expensive city to live in, and I needed to find a job. So I got a job in publishing. My first job was Scholastic Books as a publicist. And while I was there, I had already been sort of writing a little bit in college. I went to like all of the big poetry slams, Nuyorican Cafe and places like that, where we sort of dressed up and did the whole poetry scene. So I was always sort of reading and writing. But when I was at Scholastic, being around books and being with authors, I had this notion that because I love novels, I should give one a try. Well, my first novel never really saw the light of day, but it was my second novel that I started working on that I really started to need and put some energy in. I used to close my office every day at 4:00 and pretend like I was working on work, but I was actually working on my novel. And at the time I was living in New Jersey. So I would take the train, and on the train, I would actually write and then go back and forth. So that was sort of my practice. I wrote on the train, I closed my office at work, I wrote, typed everything in. And, I was spending all this time with these New York Times bestselling authors. Today's Show, Good Morning America, it was back before COVID. So we drove in the car with them. And so I would ask questions like, how do you get an agent? And, what's your writing process like? And, all those type of questions. And others are very gracious, as you all probably know. Yeah. So they were really good about giving me information. And, it got to the point where I had been working on this novel for a while. I got pregnant, I was married, and I told my husband, I said, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to take care of our baby, and I'm going to get this novel out, and I'm going to be a New York Times bestselling author. And he said, you going to quit your job? And I'm like, yes, don't worry. I'm going to quit my job. It's going to be fine. I know a lot of people. I've been working in the industry for a few years. And so it's going to go like this. Well, I quit my job. I wrote my novel. I had my son, but I wasn't able to get a publishing deal. I finally got an agent after maybe 15 or 20 rejections. And then that agent finally took my book to market. She was rejected 10 times. We got down to the last editor, and she said, this editor's interested in buying your book. She was like, she's going to think about it over the weekend. She'll get back to you on Monday, and it should be a go. Well, by this time now, I have 3 little children at home. This is how long it has taken. And my agent gets back to me on Monday and she says, I'm so sorry. She was like, she can't buy your book. Let's wait 6 months and we'll see what happens. And at this point, I had already been dragging this novel around for so many years. As I mentioned, I went from 1 kid to 3 kids. And so my husband and I just sort of decided that we were going to take what I learned in publishing and start our own publishing company. And that's how we got my first book off the ground.
You guys, I had to have her share this story because I know a lot of you have books, you're wanting to be authors. I love to be at this intersection of entrepreneurship and building businesses, especially for women. And it is always hard, no matter what industry you're in. But someone even in the comments said you manifested it. It's inspiring. And here you are, literally, your dreams came true. New York Times bestselling author. People are scrambling to read your book, talk about it. So thank you for sharing that, because I think it's so inspiring to so many of us. And you've just got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing for your dream.
Yeah, you can't give up. If there's any writers in the room, the biggest advice I can say to you is don't let the story die inside of you. It is not easy. It's not
Somebody write that
easy.
quote down and put it on a t-shirt. Don't let the story. Did you make that up, or is that like a known author quote? Because that is beautiful.
Take credit for it, but
Chris,
you
please
know.
write that down. I'm posting it to our thing tomorrow. Yeah.
Yes, don't let the story die inside of you. It's not easy being an author, and there's going to be a lot of people who don't see your vision or don't understand your voice. You know, in the beginning, I kept thinking, oh, I need to change. I thought I needed to write a little bit more like Eric Jerome Dickey, you know, because back in the early, 2000s, his books were really popular. And so I was trying to write like him, but it wasn't until I sort of sat with myself and sat with my characters and developed my own voice that I started to be successful as a writer.
Well, let's get into writing. You now sort of made this switch to historical fiction. Yellow Wife, which many of us in our last conversation, now that we've discussed the whole book, saw the weavings of Yellow Wife into this book. But here we are with The House of Eve. Can you tell us a little bit about writing a historical fiction novel and your process? And then we're going to dive into the book.
Well, I had not set out to write Yellow Wife. My first 3 novels are all contemporary fiction. I was quite satisfied with writing about me. My first novel, Love in a Carry-On Bag, was a long-distance love story. My husband and I started off long distance. My second novel, Second House from the Corner, was about a woman who got married with secrets. And she had these 3 children, and she was drowning as a stay-at-home mom. Well, I didn't get married with secrets, but I did have these 3 kids, and I knew what that was like. So I wrote about that. And then There Was Me was a novel about something I had overheard. It was sort of gossip that I turned into a novel. And so it was sort of what I knew how to do. Well, I was standing in my kitchen in February of 2015, and I heard a voice that said, move. And I was living in New Jersey. My husband and I, we had 3 kids. We were outgrowing our house. So we were already looking to move, but it was like move, like out of the state move.
Like a voice, literally like a calling.
A calling. And it was like, you could say yes to it or you could ignore it. And I could feel it in my body that it was something I was supposed to do. This was February of 2015. By June 2015, we were all moved into our house in Virginia. Everything went smoothly. I mean, there was no hiccups, and I couldn't really explain it. Well, 9 months later, I had some friends from Newark come down to visit, and someone suggested that I take them on the Richmond Slave Trail. And that trail with my kids and their kids, and we had the kids reading the different markers, that was where I discovered the story of Mary Lumpkin. And as the kids were reading the markers, I could feel the hairs on my arms stand up. And it was like, you need to be paying attention. And it was almost as if the ancestors sort of got in my car and followed me home, because I became obsessed with everything that had to do with Mary Lumpkin and the Lumpkins jail. And, that's part of history. And I was really afraid to switch genres. I thought, would my contemporary fiction fans, the very few that I had at the time, would they follow me over to historical fiction? Was there something, was there a skill set that you needed to write historical fiction? I like to read it, but I didn't know if I could actually write it. And so while I was overcome by the story, I was also really afraid. And I had a friend who came to my house and she said, Sadeqa, the thing that scares you most is what you're supposed to be doing next.
Write that down, you guys. Gems to be had. We are all leaving here like empowered and inspired. You were right. You just need your friends to come over and tell you sometimes, or come to book club.
Yeah. And that opened the door for me. And so I said, the very least I can do is give Yellow Wife a try. And I'm so glad I did, because that novel really has put me on the map. I mean, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So House of Eve, this book, I mean, we all love books. We all read so much, but when I tell you, people loved this book, the conversations that we had, how personal it became for so many of us. I went to an Easter dinner, with family the other day, and people in my own sphere that I didn't even know were coming up and saying this was my family. This was my family. So I'm just really grateful. And I want to start off because, when I got my copy very early, it talked a little bit more about your background and why you chose to write this book. And can you share that with us? Like what the impetus was to writing this book?
Well, after Yellow Wife went out into the world, I was very, very clear that I had given the world my absolute best. As a writer, that novel was the best that I had to offer. And the question that kept plaguing me was, how do you better your best? And again, that's a scary thing, right? Like, how do you better your best? And I remember sort of fishing around for ideas. And there was this one character, her name was Ruby, and she just kept coming to me. The things that I knew about her was that she was 15. She was beautiful. She was educated and she was ambitious. And she was so beautiful and shapely that when she walked through the streets of North Philadelphia, grown men catcalled her on the street. So I knew she was in sexual danger. And I also knew that she had a mother that wished she had never been born. And having that mother-daughter relationship was not something that was new to me. My grandmother told me that she was the black sheep of our family, that she got pregnant with my mom at 14 and she had her at 15. And she wasn't married. And so there was a lot of shame around the birth of my mother, so much so that they hid it from everyone. And so my mother would tell me that she didn't know that my grandmother was her mother until she was in the 3rd grade, because it had never openly been discussed. And, it was this big secret. And I could see this tumultuous energy between the two of them, but I could never quite put my finger on like what that was. And I started to think about mothers and daughters and their relationship. And then I started to think, well, what options did my grandmother have in the 1950s when she found herself pregnant and unmarried and poor? Like, what options did she have? And that sort of began the research for the House of E for me.
Wow. I mean, this was such a story that was also very interesting to me, was that it hasn't been, we've all lived it, but we couldn't go, this wasn't a book that we heard every day. So even in researching the historical pieces of it, where did you go to find stories or accounts of this apart from just anecdotal, this happened in my family, but we never talked about it?
Well, I found the first part was that I found these homes for unwed women, right? And so that was sort of that thread, that was that piece that I thought, wow, a lot of people don't know that there were these homes for girls, between 1943 and 1975, I think something like 1.5 million babies were born in these homes. And these women were forced to give up their babies. It was before IVF. And so if there was a couple that wanted to have a baby, this was really the only way to get the baby. And, looking in my own family history, my mom not knowing, that her mom was her mom, and just sort of piecing all those pieces together, I found a book called The Girls Who Went Away by Ann Fessler. And in the book, she describes over 100 different girls that this happened to, that they were sent to these homes and their stories. Some of them were in love and got pregnant. Some of them were raped, all different types of stories. Some of them went willingly. Sometimes their parents dropped them off. Sometimes they knew what they were in the homes for, and sometimes they didn't. So just reading those accounts sort of gave me an overall feeling of what these young girls were going through.
Okay, we're going to start opening up to questions to you guys. Please raise your little hand icons in the corner, but I just have to ask a couple things to just because I need to know. I want to talk about the characters in this book because there were so many incredible women. But from Ruby to Eleanor to Rose Pride, all of them were just so fascinating. We had very strong reactions to Inez, but tell me about just Ruby and Eleanor. We just want to know, how do these characters you talked a little bit about how Ruby showed up for you, but do you have a favorite? We need all the tidbits of how you feel about women that we were so attached to for so long.
Yeah, I felt like Ruby was someone in my family. I felt like she was really easy for me to access because the story started off being Ruby's story. And I didn't know that Eleanor was even going to be a character. So when I realized that I was writing about Ruby and that I wanted to write about these homes for unwed women, what I found was that these homes were largely for white women because white babies were the commodity. And I thought, well, I'm not satisfied with that answer. I know that Black women, our stories are never one dimensional. We're always three dimensional. And so I thought there has to be a way around this. And while I was thinking about this, I was sitting in my office, I'm in my office right now. And I was sitting there and I could feel this energy come over me, like this presence. And it was strong and it was defiant and it was angry and it was desperate. And she said, I'm Eleanor and I need your help. I need to have a baby. And I thought, okay, all right, hold on. This wasn't part of my plan. Okay, what do I do with this? And so I believe that if you don't grab onto characters and you don't grab onto stories, it's going to leave you and it's going to find another author, and you're going to go to your local bookstore and you're going to see your book on the shelf with someone else's name. And so I said, okay, Eleanor, hang on, let me figure out what to do with you. And I went to go watch, I usually take the weekends off. So I was watching Toni Morrison's documentary, The Pieces I Am. Mm-hmm. And in the documentary, Toni Morrison says she didn't know that Black folks separated themselves by color until she stepped foot on Howard University in the 1950s. Because growing up in Ohio, Black folks were so busy getting along with everyone. She grew up with Germans and Italians and Irish and Poles that they didn't have time to pit themselves against each other. And so I thought, well, what if Eleanor, little Miss Eleanor, was from Ohio? She gets to DC, she goes to Howard, and Howard has graduated the most doctors, African-American doctors, out of any university in the country.
So I know that you people in here, they're going to start dropping their yes, because they got all the facts. They knew their history. Like we'd be reading and they'd be like, that's Howard University. They really represent very hard.
Well, I knew that was the place to go if you were trying to find somebody with money. And so I thought she would end up there. She would fall in love. She would not fit. And she would need to have a baby to make everything right. And that was sort of how Eleanor made her way into the story and made it a story, because I didn't really have a story until I found Eleanor. So while Ruby came first and she was easier for me to access, I needed Eleanor to complete the story.
Oh, so beautiful. So beautiful. I can't see hands. Are there hands already? Or because we can keep going. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anyone's questions here. Is the raised hand off? Okay, there you go. Terry, I see you there. Terry, you can unmute and ask your question. How are you, Terry?
Hello. This is awesome. This is great. I'm an author. So my question is, how did you determine who to make first person versus who to make third person, and how did you even do that? Because that was thing just I loved it.
I'm so glad you loved it, because it was something that kept coming up in my editorial conversations with my editor, my agent. They're like, why'd you do that? Well, Ruby came first, and when she came, I felt like I was walking through the story as Ruby, right? And so when I write in first person, it's because I want you to feel like you're on the journey with the person. So either it's like you are the person walking through the story, or you're walking alongside the character. So I wrote Yellow Wife in first person for that reason. But when Eleanor came, there was a little bit of distance between us. And I felt like, oh, she needs to be sort of written in third person. And so I started it that way, and I didn't know if it was actually going to stick, but it did.
Thank you. We wondered
You're
about
welcome.
That. Great question. Tiffany Ellison, I see you over there. I see your hands raised. Welcome to the stage.
Hello, how you doing?
Hi.
First of all, I want to say I enjoyed both books, Yellow Wife and The House of Eve. And I want to say when I read the Yellow Wife, I didn't think I was going to like it at first because of the time period, but I ended up really enjoying it. But back to the House of Eve. I want to know, is there a part two? Because when the story ended, I was like, why, why didn't she show up to meet her father for lunch? So I have to know, is there going to be a part two?
Well, I never say never to a sequel. I have not written any sequels today. All 5 of my books are standalones, but sometimes there's a thread between a book and another book. And I will say that I started writing yesterday, so 2 days in, feeling good about myself. So I am working on
yesterday. Wait, you can't just sneak that in.
I just started yesterday. When I tell you, it is like just words and threads. It's just words and threads right now. But it is a new story. I will say that I always leave the door open for, maybe a character to appear. So we will see. But that was sort of the end of the story. Like, we got to the point where we knew whose baby it was. We know that everybody is well. We don't know so much what Ruby's motive is or what her intention is, because, I sort of didn't see her as being, she was successful. My favorite line in The House of Eve is, I can be unhappy, but I can't be poor. When Ruby says that, that's my favorite line in the whole book. And so Ruby could be unhappy, but she couldn't be poor. And so when we see her in that last scene, the smile never reaches her eyes. So we don't know if she's completely happy, but we do know she's not poor.
Oh, Tiffany, thank you for bringing up that great question, because we talked about that line, like just knowing that she had Aunt Marie saying, we're going to scrape your way out. This is the only way out. And she needed to like make this huge sacrifice and also feel like it was okay. This brings up the question of like motherhood. And Sadeqa, you had said this before, where you're like, every character that you choose, you have to know what you sort of ask yourself, what do they want more than anything else? Mm-hmm. And that line for Ruby, I think, just summed it up so much. She was like, I just can't be poor. That's my bottom line.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Who did I see next? Lynette Ray, how are you? You can unmute.
Hi, I'm good. Hi, Sadeqa. Loved your book. I have to
Thank you.
So we had, when we were talking about the book over the weeks, a lot of discussion about the guys. I was a Shimmy fan. I was not a William fan. So I was just wondering where you fell with the guys.
Well, I was a fan of them both for different reasons. I tend to like all of my characters. I mean, for some, I know people can't stand Rose Pride, but I understood Rose Pride, like I got her. I have a son. I get it. But I like them both for very different reasons. I think that Shimmy tried. I mean, he definitely tried. He was in a bubble, and there's nothing that you can do about the way that you're sort of brought up, and that, you could work against it, but I don't know. It just, to me, I felt like that's who he was. And most people love William Pride. I'm actually very surprised. I've had people tell me that they have crushes on him. Where can they find him? Where is he? I'm like, he's just up here.
I started off liking William, but then he couldn't get out from under his mother. And then I had to,
you weren't sure about him for a bit.
Yeah.
But
I like them both.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, my other question, just piggybacking on that, Lynette, is about Shimmy. And just why you chose, a Jewish white boy landlord. Like, just tell us a little bit more about Shimmy, because he just felt like he had this pure heart, which I also think William did. But there was something about Shimmy where you just, I don't know. I don't even know how to put it into words, y'all.
Well, Shimmy, so in my own family history, The reason why my grandparents didn't marry was because of colorism. My grandfather was very, very light skinned, and he lived in one section of North Philadelphia. My grandmother was mahogany brown, and she lived in another section. And so, like oil and water in the Black community, they were never intended to mix. And as I was drafting out the novel, I usually pick up my daughters after school, 3 o'clock or so, but I'm still sort of thinking about the book. And my middle daughter, I said to her, I'm telling her what I'm saying. And I say, so I think I'm just going to make Ruby's love interest really, really light skinned. And she goes, oh, no, mommy. She was like, make him Italian. You have to up the ante, And I thought, oh, yeah, up the ante. But in looking at Philadelphia, Italians and Blacks live together in South Philadelphia. And I already knew that I was writing about North Philadelphia, where my mother is from. And so I sort of picked her brain and looked at the history of North Philadelphia. And I saw that Blacks and Jews lived right next to each other, and that they interacted through commerce and goods and, landlords and that sort of thing. And so I thought, oh, yeah, he has to be a Jewish boy.
Oh, I love that. Christian Walker, I saw you had your hand up. If you're still there and have a question, please unmute. But you might have put your hand down. I'm not sure. Are you there?
I put my hand down because I kind of feel like she answered it. I'm actually Amber Riley, and this is my friend Christian Walker. We did club together. So on Tuesdays, I have 3 kids. She let me come to her house to get away from my children. And
I love that.
Together. So on Instagram, I'm Riley Silent, and the entire time I called William Bill because he was acting up.
Oh, you were so funny.
Oh, thanks, girl. So when I was just wondering, did you mean for us to like go through these highs and lows of like liking some characters and then maybe taking them down a bit? Because William started out at a real high, and like the person previous to us, she said like, we were like, why are you going behind your wife's back? So I was just kind of wondering if you wrote the character like that for us to like love them and hate them, see 2 sides of them at all times.
Yeah, well, isn't that how you feel about real people in your life?
Ooh.
That's always my intention. All I'm trying to do with my fiction is create truth. Like I write it as fiction, but I'm oftentimes telling the truth.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Well, thanks, ladies. Love to see you. All right, Brandy, my cheesy friend, because we Gouda together, and you guys know I love cheese. How are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
I'm great. Good to see you.
Hi, nice to see you.
You too. So my question is, a lot of people did not like Inez. But I felt for her, I think because like therapy and doing my own like mom healing therapy and things like that. So I saw a little bit of Ruby and Eleanor in Inez's story, with her dating the guy that was, had money and kind of off limits, her going to the house and all that, and the mom sending her away, and then her also being poor and being on the other side of town as well. So was that something that was intentional, kind of merging a little bit of each of their stories into her, or is that something that I just gathered?
Actually, I think you gathered right, but that doesn't always mean that I'm conscious of it when I'm doing it. But you gathered right. But sometimes things just happen because I'm sort of following my characters. I'm letting them lead the way. And then, when book clubs often tell me things about my book, and I'm like, oh, did I? And so it's definitely is one of those things. But the thing about Inez, I will say this, because I also am a woman who's been healing mom things throughout my life. And then, I have my own 3 children. And so I know what that feels like. And what I've come to the conclusion on in writing The House of Eve, because the mother-daughter relationship is so strong throughout this book in so many different levels, is that all mothers are always doing the very best that they can in the moment that they make a decision. And it may not feel like it to the child. It may not look like it to everyone around them. But in that moment, that is really the absolute best that mother has to offer. Now, in hindsight, we can look back and be like, oh man, what I should have said was, what I could have did was. But in the moment, we are all doing our very, very best. And that's the thing that I've learned in writing The House of Eve. And that's what makes Inez human for me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we did like tend to forgive her at the end. Like it summed it up, which I think again, like your writing is so beautiful because it just, it gets us engrossed. We're not left wanting for anything. We have such a deeper understanding of the characters, of how you did it. And it's just masterful weaving. So we loved it. Thank you very much. Thanks, Brandy.
Yeah.
Carla, where are you? I see you. Carla Casas.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see me. I'm not really good at
You're a flower.
Zoom.
That's okay. You're a beautiful flower. We'll take you as is.
Sorry. I wanted to know, are you planning to do a prequel? Because the other characters are so like Eleanor's mother, Miss Rose, even Ruby's mother. They're such interesting women. So I was just wanting to know, would you be considering a prequel? And if you do decide to do a prequel, would you do like a combined movie about that?
Ooh.
Because this book is perfect for a movie.
I like that idea. This book is perfect for a movie. Let's goose that energy right on up.
Yes, y'all.
Goose it.
We're very powerful manifestors in this group. So yes.
Yes. It had not crossed my mind actually until you mentioned it, but nothing is ever off the table.
Okay.
Thank you.
We love that. We love that. I feel like there's more to be revealed there. You never know. Roshana, how are you?
Oh, there we go. Hey, how's everybody tonight?
Good.
Good. So I have a quick question was, my main thing I wanted to know, where did you come up with the name Shimmy?
So I always sort of research my names in general. I look at the time period. So I'll look at when he should have been born, right? And I can't remember my notes at this moment, but the story takes place in the 50s. So he's probably born somewhere in the 30s. And so I would look at that time period and see popular names for babies born during that time. And then I'll break it down by ethnicity. So for like Ruby and Eleanor and Inez and Rose Pride, like those were all names like that would have been popular during the time that they were born. And so with Shimmy, I had to go a little bit further because he was Jewish and look at what nicknames would be as well, because I knew that he needed to have a catchy nickname too.
Yeah, it definitely was catchy. Yeah.
What was his full name? Was he Shlomo or
Simon?
Oh, he was Simon.
Simon. Yeah, Simon Shapiro.
Oh, okay.
Well, you dropped some good gems for us tonight on those quotes and things. That was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Roshana.
Yeah.
Tyler Taylor. Where are you, sis?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Sadeqa. Hi, Tanya. So happy to be back in the book club. Sadeqa, phenomenal. I love this book. It's the first book I've read in a few months, so this was fantastic. But my question for you is, how intentional was it to make the stories correlate between Inez and Ruby's father and her and Shimmy? Because I did not get that until the final Tanya Talks, the last episode. And I was like, hold on. Both of their true loves, and there's the colorism, and then there's the racism, or, you know, how intentional was that? Was that an afterthought? Was like, I just need to know.
It wasn't in my original outline, if that's what you mean. So when I start out to write the story, I sort of have an outline, which is sort of my roadmap. And then as I get into the story, you know, I turn it in, my editor or my agent will push me in certain, you know, they have pressure points almost, where they'll push on something and say like, give me a little bit more, go a little bit deeper. And so as I'm pushing against that and going a little bit deeper, Inez's love story with the guy who was the son of the funeral home came much later. That was sort of like 4 or 5 drafts in. And I thought, oh, but then when I got, you know, through the whole novel and I saw that they were parallel, I thought, wow, that makes a lot of sense. But it wasn't my intention as I was writing. It was sort of something that happened natural.
Brilliant. She's just brilliant. Like and it's really interesting because I think we've talked to a lot of different authors, but you write in I feel like the characters come through you. Like people were saying God or this, like your writing is very, I don't know if it's spiritual, but it's different. Whereas like we'll talk to authors and they're like, they plot everything out, but it just feels like it just resonates. These characters are so alive in you that they have to tell their own story. It's really fascinating and beautiful.
Yeah, I have to so today, I'll just tell you a little bit. So today when I was writing, I was working on a character, and this is my first time writing since January, right? Because when The House of Eve came out, it's been all about The House of Eve. I have no time to write. And so I sat down and I have this idea in my head, but I'm also sort of like calling the character's name. And I say, you know, I don't want to tell you her name yet. But I said her name and I said, I sort of said her name and I'm like, tell me your story. Like, what's going on? What is it that you want? You know, what's bothering you? So I'm like asking her questions and I handwrite everything first. So most of my writing today happened in my journal because there's something that happens between like that hand brain coordination. Like that's the first way we learn to write. Like in school, kindergarten, first grade, we learn to actually write. So my first drafts are sort of that like journal draft. And then I put it into the computer. So I feel like where I am right now is in that getting to know you phase. So I have an idea of the story I want, but I'm still getting to know them. Like today, I just realized, you know, what she looks like. I didn't know that up until this point, you know? And so just little, like every day is almost like peeling back an onion or something. And you just get a little bit deeper and deeper. And then when I get to that point where I fully know them, then we could sort of journey along the story. And then things are just happening that I didn't intend. Like Inez's relationship being parallel to Ruby's.
Wow, so fascinating. Thank you so much. Thanks, Tyler. Alexis, thank you. Let's bring you up.
This is my favorite song on the whole playlist because this makes me think of Ruby and Shimmy at the ice cream store that very first time when they're like just young love and just not quite sure what's happening. Hormones are moving and yeah, I love this song.
Hi, Sadeqa, how are
song
you?
Is this?
Rock and roll.
Chris, okay, Chris, will you drop this song and the musician in the chat just so that we know, and we'll share the playlist as well. But now that you said it's one of your favorites, we all need to know. Hi, Alexis.
Hi, Sadeqa, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks.
I had a question about Nadine. Can you talk more about her and how she was able to get like the passes real quickly?
So Nadine, you know, first of all, Nadine was named after my aunt Nadine. And when I started The House of Eve and I was sort of working on Eleanor's character, my aunt passed away very suddenly. And she was the aunt who I thought was sort of kind of the hipster. Like she could always make things happen. She was the mover and the shaker and, you know, ask me no questions, I tell you no lies type of aunt, right? And so I thought, wow, we need a character like that. And everybody needs a friend like that. And particularly Eleanor, because she was so sort of squarish, right? So she needed the friend who sort of knew her way around things. Nadine was also from DC. So while she went to Howard, she was a city girl. So she knew how to do things that Eleanor wouldn't know how to do.
It was great. And I say this a lot to those of you who listen to the Audible version. I loved her voice on there. She was so like, she was embodied that, just hip, all of that. So loved it. Thank you. Thanks, Alexis. Chelsea, how are you?
Sorry, I'm on mute.
Oh, there you go.
Me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, how are you both?
Good.
I just want to first off by saying I just really love how you brought like all the senses to life. Like I could really smell and taste the ice cream shop scene. I felt like, even though I've never had a baby, I felt like I was giving birth in those scenes in like the House of Eve. I felt like in so much pain. I feel like I was like really like empathetic in the book. And then I wrote my stuff down. Then I can also hear the music being played. I just wanted to say I love that about your book, all the senses. But my question is about Ruby's mom. I loved how you said earlier that you liked all your characters in the book. I can definitely relate to that because I could feel like I felt a little love for everyone, but there are some people I like the least. Like William's dad, surprisingly. I'm like, he's so lazy and stereotypical men back in the day. And I also hated Shimmy's dad for obvious reasons. So who did you like the least?
Oh, good question.
Oh, wow. Goodness. You know, that's a very easy question for Yellow Wife because it would be the jailer. Like, of course, I like the jailer the least.
Right.
But for the House of Eve, I probably have to be Mother Margaret.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I wanted to fight her.
Yeah, probably Mother Margaret.
That's a good one.
Or Leap.
Because she was racist and abusive.
Yeah, let's say both of them.
Really wanted to,
female and male. Yeah, we those are the two.
Predator, yes.
Yeah.
But that was my only question. Thank you so much for bringing senses to life, making me love reading again. I mean, I've always loved reading, but this is one of my favorite books.
Oh, and you know what? On the giving birth scenes, I just wanted to add this because the feel it, taste it, touch it, smell it, all of that is very intentional. That's one of the things when I teach my writing classes, I tell my students that you have to bring in all 5 senses. But the birth scene, the hardest scene in the book for me to write was Ruby giving birth. And I remember I was sitting on my sun porch because the weather was nice. And I wrote that scene and it was 2:00 in the afternoon. And I texted my agent. I said, Ruby just gave birth. I can't handle it. I'm going to bed because it literally took like everything out of me. Like if you could feel it, I have to have it like go through my body in order for it to sort of ring true on the page. And so I felt every squirm, every scratch, every pull. And it was like, oh, I'm going to bed. I'm going to bed. 2:00 on a summer afternoon. I had to get under the covers. And it was like I had to get back in the womb almost to sort of protect myself because it was that hard to write that scene.
My goodness. I never had kids, but I don't know, those scenes weren't helping.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm just kidding.
No, it was really intense. And just also I felt the coldness of the doctor.
So racist.
Like it was like she was cattle, just here, let me take this child from you. Let me rip this baby from you. And just you'll have 5. Oh, it was really intense. So I could see how that would be difficult for you to let go of as well as a writer. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Nicole, welcome. I see you there. You can unmute and come on up. Yeah.
Hello. So glad.
Nicole.
Wait, you're still on mute. Unmute. Okay, here, I'm unmuting you.
Okay,
there you are. Perfect.
Am I good?
Yes.
Hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, Sadeqa. Hey, Tanya.
Hi.
So my question, I think we discussed this in the book club, but what was Aunt Marie's profession?
Oh, Aunt Marie was a lounge singer. You know, she was a cross-dressing lounge singer. That was her main job. And then she did everything at the club, but her main job was she was a performer. That's why she sort of got dressed up and, you know, her bedroom was like a dressing room. And so she was a lounge singer, a cross-dressing lounge singer. And Kiki's was a gay and lesbian bar. You did get that, right? And so, you know, she also would clean up to make extra money, but her main position was that she was a singer and a performer. And then, of course, she was a numbers runner.
Okay. I was thinking she was like, at one point, I thought she was like a bouncer because of her build. So I was like, oh, okay. Is she a bouncer? Is she, you know, what is she at the club?
If you have some time, look up Gladys Bentley. She was who Aunt Marie was based on. And I'm kicking myself because I forgot, I put in the author note all of the people who I've based the story on. And for whatever reason, I forgot about Gladys Bentley, but she was the inspiration for Aunt Marie's character. So if you get a chance to look her up, that'll give you a little bit more insight.
Okay. Oh, I love it. It was such a, I mean, I just finished A Yellow Wife. I read House of Eve first, and then they told me to go back and read Yellow Wife. So I read that and then went back and connected it. And it was just amazing. So of course I had to go and research Virginia Union University. Just so much information. Great writing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also, because Aunt Marie was such a great character, you know, she was a mother, you know, the mother that, you know, Ruby also needed, but also the fact that, and this I think was really interesting because you are intentionally picking stories like these maternity homes, these lost archives of life that, you know, oftentimes people don't write, but also weaving in this experience of having this like queer woman that popped up in the 1950s, like, but it was so subtle, but I appreciate all these little pieces. Like, how did you find Gladys Bentley?
Actually, I think my agent found Gladys Bentley for me. I think Charisse did. I think I was talking to her about who I thought Aunt Marie was. And then on Instagram, she sent me a clip on Gladys Bentley. And I thought, yes, that's exactly who I was talking about. That's her. And so I was able to sort of pull strings. But I always saw her as this sort of big boned aunt who, you know, was not traditional in any way.
We kind of look at her like we thought she would be Queen Latifah. Maybe that's too easy of a character, but
yeah,
she would rock it. Yeah.
I like Queen Latifah. I also liked Octavia Spencer. I could see Octavia Spencer as her as well.
Good
yeah.
one. Oh, we're getting rounds of applause there. Oh, thank you. Well, thank you, Nicole. Sunshine.
Yes, thank you.
There. Where's Sunshine? Hi, Sunshine. Can you unmute? Maybe you're stepped away for a second. We can come back to you, Sunshine. Okay, I might not be able to say this, but Deshefany?
It's okay. Jennifer.
Come on.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, please tell me how to say your name properly. I didn't hear it.
It's Jennifer. The D is silent.
Jennifer, that's beautiful.
Oh, I love that. Jennifer. I love that.
Okay, welcome.
First I want to say thank you for blessing us with such a nice book. I literally ate that book. My question is, were you a little bit hesitant to have Shimmy's mom hold on to the deal? Because you can see that the place that she described to Ruby was not exactly what was on the flyers and everything, but thank God again for Aunt Mary to have the lawyer sign that paper. But I'm pretty sure all of us were a little bit like, you better get a lawyer because you didn't know. Really roll with that. So when she talked about it, we were like, well, you better have that in writing. You better have that in writing. But at the end, we saw that. So I was wondering if that was the main goal, or did you decide that later?
That's a really good question. I often think that brochures sell you on things that's not true, right? It always, if you get a brochure of a hotel or a vacation spot and you're like, oh my gosh, and you get there and it's a dump, right? And so that was sort of my feelings with the brochure, that it's not gonna show the horrors of a maternity home on the cover. It's gonna make you wanna come and give up that baby. But with Sylvia Shapiro, Mrs. Shapiro, I did struggle with whether this white Jewish woman would hold up her end of the bargain after she got what she wanted. And sometimes as a writer, you have to decide between what you think really happened and what's going to satisfy your reader.
That's a great way to put it, because I feel like I had to hold my breath. And I think all of us did. Nobody trusted her. Right? Nobody did. And we had a lot of conversations on like what mothers do for like all of them were tiger moms, right? And shout out, we also loved the title chapters. That was not lost on us, but the tiger mom and all these women were like, what do I have to do for my children? Or maybe in Ruby or Eleanor's case for them. But you know, Shimmy's mom was a perfect example of that. We just weren't sure if she was going to make good on her promise. And I think for me, I was glad she did. I wouldn't have been surprised, but I was glad she did.
Yeah.
Thank you to Jeffany. Say it again. I'm going to think about this name all day.
It's Jennifer.
Jennifer. I just want to write it down.
French. Forget the whole English. Just read it in French.
Oh. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Sunshine, are you here?
I am here. I couldn't unmute myself. So
I figured, or maybe there were kids in the background. You never know.
Yeah, but that too. I'm trying to multitask. They're going to bed. So I just wanted to say hi, Sadeqa. I just really enjoyed your book. I have a question, and just with regards to Eleanor and just the thought process, because Eleanor, in her first 2 pregnancies, her mother knew. So she was aware, but then in the 3rd pregnancy, and then having lost the child, she didn't tell her mom. And so throughout that entire, having to hide it, was there an intent behind that of why Eleanor didn't share that with her mom until the very end? Just curious to know your thought process.
The intention was that they weren't supposed to tell anyone. Eleanor didn't want anyone to know. She wanted it to be a secret that she and William would carry to their grave. And once William told his mother, he sort of broke her trust in that way. But then it was also a little bit justified because he sort of thought like, well, you didn't tell me about the first time. And so then it sort of made them kind of even. But I just thought that maybe she would be embarrassed, and also I never intended for her to tell her mom, to be honest. Like I just thought Eleanor was really like, this is the secret that I'm going to carry to my grave. She wasn't going to tell anyone. And so William was the one who broke that. It was never her intention. And she only really told her mom at the end when everything sort of fell apart. And she in a couple of my books, I always feel like women need to go home. Like, I feel like we go through a bunch of things, or that, my characters go through a bunch of things. And at some point there's nothing else to do but go home. And when you go home, that's where the healing and the balm happens, Yeah. And so that was why she ended up telling her mom, because she needed to go home.
Oh.
Okay. Thank you.
That. Great. People, that resonates with so many people. You just need to go home.
Yeah.
You need to go home.
Thanks, Sunshine. Hi,
you.
Bianca. How are you? Come
Hi.
on. Hi.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I came a little late. So Sadeqa, I actually met you at the Tucson Book Festival. So I got on this a little late. So I want to make sure if you've already answered this, just say I've already answered it, and I'll catch it from one of my friends. It was just so cool. I love when
Bianca.
You said
are you my publicist friend?
Hi, Bianca. Yes. Hi. My friend turned me on to this. My friend Benita, who's on here, who's been in this book club forever, was like, oh my God, she's going to be on there tonight. So that's why I was like slightly late.
Oh, I'm glad to see you. I'm so glad to see you.
But I don't know if you answered this, but I know when I met you, you were talking about that you always knew you wanted to be a writer because you had been a publicist before for a book company. My question to you is, did you know that because it was the spiritual connection? Because I love the fact that you say these characters come to you and you have to write about them. And so I was like, oh my God, that's like, I'm writing a blog. So I was like, I need to take that and like literally like have these topics and stuff come to me. So like, is that where that came from, or did you just find that they came?
No, I think it came from being such a reader, right? So I started off being like a major reader, and I wanted to be an actress. And so if you think about good writers are really good readers, right? Like you've read a ton of stories and you get to the point where you're like, I could do this. I have a story playing in my head. And then me wanting to be an actress is sort of, it's all kind of the same to some degree, right? Like it's all in the same sort of realm. So that sort of is what propelled me. I would say I didn't really connect to like the characters and have them want me to tell their story. I don't even know if my first book was like that. I think this is a more grown-up version of me as a writer, right? So my first novel, I remember struggling with thinking that I was in charge of the story, right? Like I had to make it happen. I had to tell this story. It wasn't as much of me getting into the portal and letting the story flow through me. It was more so me thinking I was in control. And that book took 10 years to write, right? And so each book got a little bit faster, and I got a little bit closer to the way that I was meant to write a book, right? That first one wasn't all the way there yet. I was still figuring things out, right? And so now, like when I got to Yellow Wife, it was to the point where I was so deep in 1850 that my body would be in the room, but I was completely in 1850, to the point where my daughter had come in my office one day and dropped a book. And I literally jumped out of my skin. And she's like, "Mommy, what the heck?" And I'm like, "You see me here, but I'm not really here," right? So that happened over books. That wasn't where I started as a writer.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, how
Good to see you.
beautiful. Great question, Bianca. Thank you. Thank you. Osiris, can you see?
Hi, everyone.
Oh, I love your background.
I thought I would just make a little background here.
Of course.
Yes, I love it.
Super. Well, really, it's just an homage to the book. You know, I think you can imagine we love the book. Everyone in the book club, we just loved it. But since no one asked about this, I had to. But Bernie, the character Bernie that was in the book, you know, I read the book, and then also I like to listen at the same time. And he, you know, I was just so drawn to Bernie because of his background, and you know, you could see he had that accent and then where he was from. And I just wondered kind of, I guess, the background and how the two of them, what was your intent with Bernie?
That's a really good question. So I will say this in my outline, because I do have an outline, you know, I have that roadmap. In my outline, I sort of was thinking like, wow, I left it open in my mind, like, would she be so lonely that she would be itching almost to have an affair, right? Like, would she be that lonely? Because think of COVID and how lonely some of us have been, and that long stretch of no contact, and your life is sort of in between these few walls, right? And so in my outline, when I sort of dreamed Bernie up, I thought it could be some energy between them. And I wasn't sure, would she act on it or would it just be there, right? Because while William was one particular Black man, Bernie was more like her father, right? And we normally fall in love with people who are like, my husband is very much like my dad in a lot of ways, not the way they look, but their, you know, their personality and that sort of thing. And so we tend to fall for that. And so I wanted to show the parallel opposite of who her husband was and see what that would do in that COVID-like situation.
Oh, Bernie was good.
That tension that was there with Bernie, and I mean, there was tension there because William wasn't
picked up on it. Yeah.
I mean, to share an avocado in the 1950s, it's like that's second base at least.
At least. That avocado was everything, I think.
Do you have a vision of who he is in your head?
No, not Bernie. I don't. Do you?
I'm looking at the comments because people asked it, and I'm like, I mean, he obviously has to be, you know, West Indian or where was he from? Grenada, or did he even say?
Yeah, he was. Where was he from? Was he from? I can't remember. I know it was where the big drum music is from.
Yeah, so I feel like I looked
Idris. What?
I thought Idris. I did think Idris just now when you asked me that he could probably pull it off.
He could pull it off because he's kind of got that, like, I'm a Black cowboy from the isle. I don't know, but I could see that.
Yeah.
Lamont Rucker. Oh, Lamont Rucker, guys, he would be perfect. I don't know if he can do an accent, but yeah. Great question, Osiris. Thank you so much. Okay, we're getting to 9, and I know I like to keep you on time. A couple other questions for you. People were asking, so where do you teach?
So I teach in the MFA program at Drexel University. Not every semester, but maybe every other. And I also teach for a program called Story Summit. And I think their website is like storysummit.net, maybe. I'm right now teaching a class called Year of the Novel, which is full, but I should be doing some small mentoring groups, probably starting in July. So if you are interested, go to my website, sadeqa.net, and put your information in for my newsletter, because as soon as I have that information out, I will share it.
Oh, that's a big deal. That's amazing. Everyone's writing that down. Go to Sadeqa. Please say your website again.
Sadeqa. There you go, Chris. Sadeqa.net.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's a really amazing thing. Okay. Angie was asking, who is your favorite author and what are you reading now?
Who is my favorite author? Goodness gracious. That's like, who's your favorite child? What is the favorite book that you've written?
What are you
all of
reading now?
that. Okay. What am I reading now? I just finished The First Ladies by Victoria Christopher Murray and Marie Benedict. It is about Mary McLeod Bethune and Eleanor Roosevelt's relationship, so historical fiction. It comes out June 27th. I absolutely did not know any of this. Like, to me, that book could definitely be like required reading in high school, because it's way more interesting than putting a textbook in front of the kids. So that's what I just finished. I'm having a hard time picking a audiobook. I usually do one audio and I'm reading at the same time. I just finished Lessons in Chemistry. By Barney Garmis audio, and it was phenomenal. And so I'm scared that whatever I pick next, I'm not gonna like as much.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of kind of in that in-between place.
I am very particular about even the books that I pick for book club, because if the audio doesn't jive, I can't, because a lot of people only have time to listen on audio. You guys are busy, it's like I'm in the car doing carpool. I've got so if an audiobook doesn't work, it doesn't work at all. Okay. What's your guilty pleasure TV show?
I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm sorry. My agent has to tell me what to watch, and she has not given me a good show in a while.
I love it. Okay, fair enough, Charisse. You're to blame for that.
That's right. Give me a show.
Okay, last but not least, what are your fondest memories of books that you read as a kid?
Okay. So as a teenager, it was definitely Terry McMillan, right? Mama was the book. That was the first time I saw myself in a story. I sat down and I read it twice. So definitely Terry McMillan. Maya Angelou, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, touched me someplace really, really deep. But when I was younger and I was going to the library all the time, it was all about Judy Blume. It was all about Joanna Hurwitz. And it was all about those daggone Sweet Valley High twins,
I love the Sweet Valley High twins. I loved it. Okay, I think that was, we're speaking our typical age language, chicken noodle for the soul, other people are saying, but those were like the classics that I think if you love to read at any age, you definitely had to dive down into. Sadeqa, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the gift that you give all of us. And you truly are a gifted, gifted writer. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
And I just want everyone to unmic. This is my favorite part. And please unmic and just cheer for this lady.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Wonderful,
Thank you.
wonderful.
Appreciate you.
Thank
you.
Beautiful writing. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful writing.
Sister. Enjoy.
Yeah.
You write it? Yay, Jack and Jill.
Yes,
Yay.
I hear my peeps. Yes, I hear my peeps.
Wonderful.
Thank you, guys.
Thoroughly
Thank you guys
enjoyed.
so much. This is the most fun I've had at a book club, and I can't tell you how long. I almost don't want to hang up, but I love you guys
You're
so
totally
much.
invited to stay. This is when we go to the after party.
Oh.
You have papers and stuff to grade. We just sit on here and we talk about, we're very intellectual when we talk about books, but this is when we sort of downgrade it.
Oh, well, you guys enjoy. I am teaching, so I have to pop in on a small group at 9:15.
Thank
But
you so
I
much.
love you guys so much, and thank you so much for supporting me. Please go to my website, Sadeqa.net, subscribe to my newsletter. I have a couple of live events coming up, I think between April and July. All of my events are listed. If you are in a city, come see me. Also find me on Instagram. Please be my friend on Instagram. My new favorite, that is my guilty pleasure, is Instagram. So I'm Sadeqa Says on Instagram. And thank you so much for all the love. I really appreciate you guys. And Tanya, thank you for doing this. We need this. We need your platform. And we are so grateful to have you at the helm. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. Well, I adore you. Thank you so much. And whatever you are putting out, we're picking up. I will tell you that from now on. We are fans. Thank you, sister. Thank you
so much. I better get writing. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
That's right.
All right. Bye-bye. Good night.
Right.